On Thursday, March 12, 2020, Nick Law, a Philadelphia restaurateur, filled garbage bags with salmon fillets and called his 11 staff members one by one to tell them they were laid off. The same conversation was happening in restaurants, hotels, theaters, airports, and shopping centers across every developed economy simultaneously. The COVID-19 economic shock was unlike any crisis in this series. Previous crises had been caused by financial imbalances, policy failures, or supply disruptions that accumulated over months or years. This one was caused by a deliberate decision. Governments shut their economies to prevent the spread of a lethal virus. The speed of the contraction was without precedent. The United States lost 22 million jobs in 8 weeks. The Great Financial Crisis had taken 25 months to produce 9 million job losses. 20 weeks into COVID, output had fallen more than it had in any full year of the Great Depression. The speed of the policy response was also without precedent. The CARES Act, $2.2 trillion, was signed 17 days after the World Health Organization declared a pandemic. Direct payments to households, enhanced unemployment benefits, forgivable loans to small businesses, emergency backstops for financial markets. The Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet from $4 trillion to $7 trillion in 90 days. The playbook of 2008 was deployed at 5 times the speed. The COVID economic shock posed a problem that no existing policy framework had been designed to address: a simultaneous supply and demand collapse, deliberately induced, of unknown duration. The 14.7% unemployment rate in April 2020 masked a more complex reality. Most of the job losses were in in-person services, hospitality, retail, entertainment, travel. These workers could not work from home. The professional services sector, which could, continued working with relatively minor disruption. A crisis that appeared uniform in the aggregate was profoundly unequal in its distribution. The design of the response exposed sharp differences in economic philosophy. The United States paid unemployed workers $600 per week above their existing unemployment benefits, a replacement rate that exceeded 100% for many service workers. This was effective at preventing immediate poverty but created friction around reopening. Germany, by contrast, used Kurzarbeit, short-time work, covering 6 million workers at its April 2020 peak. Rather than severing the employment relationship and paying unemployment, the government subsidized reduced hours, preserving the connection between worker and employer. When the economy reopened, German workers returned to existing jobs. American workers had to find new ones. Both approaches prevented catastrophe. The difference was in the speed of recovery and the scarring effects on labor markets that would play out over subsequent years. On March 25, 2020, Mitch McConnell announced that the CARES Act had cleared the Senate by 96 votes to 0. The House passed it by voice vote the following day. The President signed it that evening. 17 days from pandemic declaration to the largest emergency spending bill in American history. The architecture was comprehensive. $292 billion in direct household payments, $1,200 per adult, $500 per child. $268 billion in enhanced unemployment benefits, including the $600 weekly supplement and new coverage for gig workers who had never qualified for unemployment before. $813 billion in total Paycheck Protection Program loans for small businesses, forgivable if companies retained their employees. The Federal Reserve activated 9 separate emergency lending facilities in 25 days. Some were adapted from 2008. Some were new, including, for the first time, a facility to purchase corporate bonds directly. The Fed moved faster and further than it had in the entire first year following Lehman Brothers. The American Rescue Plan, signed in March 2021, added $1.9 trillion in additional support. The expanded child tax credit, providing monthly payments to families with children, reduced child poverty to its lowest recorded level in American history, one of the most rapid anti-poverty interventions ever implemented. The scale of the response worked. 22 million jobs were recovered in 28 months. After 2008, the same number of jobs had taken 78 months to recover. Government debt as a share of GDP across G7 economies has risen from roughly 40% in 1980 to over 120% today. This increase was not driven by any single catastrophic event. It accumulated gradually through hundreds of individual policy decisions, each making sense in isolation, each responding to the structural political incentive to spend today and service the costs tomorrow. The ratchet moves in one direction. The long-run consequences are genuinely uncertain, which is itself a significant part of the problem. The COVID-19 economic response produced contradictions so sharp that they read as almost deliberately constructed. The same policy decisions that pushed child poverty to generational lows also contributed to an inflation surge that would consume real wages for 2 years. The same emergency transfers that prevented economic collapse also seeded the fiscal and monetary conditions for the next crisis. The positive results were genuine. 22 million jobs recovered in 28 months. Child poverty rates fell from 18 to 12% in a single year. Operation Warp Speed produced 2 authorized vaccines in under 12 months, a scientific achievement that had required 8 to 10 years on any previous timeline. Remote work, forced on reluctant employers by necessity, turned out to preserve 87% of in-office productivity, permanently reshaping the geography of employment. The negative results were also genuine. 1.2 million excess deaths in the United States, concentrated among elderly and minority populations, representing the largest demographic shock since World War II. Third-grade reading proficiency fell to its lowest level in 30 years. Emergency visits for adolescent suicide attempts rose 51%. The K-shaped recovery visible by late 2021 showed professional services fully recovered, leisure and hospitality still 8% below pre-pandemic levels. The crisis that appeared to threaten everyone had, in the end, distributed its costs with the same precision as every crisis before it. The speed of the 2020 policy response, measured in weeks rather than the years it took after the GFC, Episode 14, reflected how much the institutional memory of 2008 had changed the reflexes of policymakers. Each crisis rewires the policy system. The question is always which wire gets crossed next. The patterns repeat. The faces change. The cost is always borne by those who had no say. Economic Crisis Explained. 2026.